joining us here live in the auditorium at Kids, and also thank you to everyone who's joining us online. I'm Carol Swallow, the chair of the department. We have a great lecture lined up for you this morning. This is the Bigelow lecture. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the lands upon which the University of Toronto operates and on which we're meeting this morning are the traditional homelands of many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, including the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat peoples, the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Anishinaabe. I'd also like to acknowledge the historical injustices and inequities that the Indigenous peoples of Canada have endured, and vow that we as a group will attempt to do better in our relationships with them and with the land. Now I'd like to introduce our chair of the Division of Cardiac Surgery, Terry Yao, who will introduce our speaker for today. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everybody. So welcome to the 2024 Bigelow Lecture. As you know, the Bigelow Lecture is an annual occurrence and really is the highlight of the academic calendar for the Division of Cardiovascular Surgery at U of T. It is intended to honor Dr. Bigelow, who was a sort of giant in cardiac surgery and really shaped the field, and particularly has a very Canadian footprint. So Dr. Bigelow was actually born in 1913, obtained his MD from the University of Toronto, and was a surgical resident at Toronto General for 3 years between 1938 and 41. During the war, he served in the Royal Canadian Army Corps, initially a field transfusion unit, and then transferred to Belgium as a battlefield surgeon at one of the clearing stations. After the war, he came back to Toronto General and then spent a year in Baltimore with Alfred Blaylock. And it was there that he conceived the idea of systemic hypothermia to protect the brain and the body during cardiac surgery, which at the time was in its very infancy. He actually performed the first cardiac operation under systemic hypothermia in a dog in 1949 and presented that report at the American Surgical Association meeting in 1950, where it caused considerable stir, to say the least. Around that time, he also came upon the serendipitous discovery of the principles of the electrical pacemaker. So it is those broad contributions in terms of systemic hypothermia and the pacemaker that for which Dr. Bigelow is most remembered. He established the first division of cardiovascular surgery here at the University of Toronto in 1953, and a couple of decades later was recognized, as one of the very few handful of Canadian presidents of the American Association of Thoracic Surgery over the sort of more than century of that organization's existence. During his career, he trained 3 generations of cardiac surgeons who have spanned out over North America and the world, and accumulated a grand total of about 25 major international and national awards, including the Order of Canada, and he is a member of the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame. When you look for Dr. Bigelow online nowadays, he still occupies an outsized presence there, in a number of capacities there. But one of the things that he is also remembered for is his book, Cold Hearts, that really sort of documents the early years and the development of many of the innovations for which he continues to be known. However, it's really one of these quotes, I think, that stands out in the minds of many of us who, have known him or of him. And this is this: humility is an open-mindedness which is acquired by an understanding of the meager state of our knowledge in relation to the vastness and elusiveness of the ultimate truth. So that humility as an investigator and the academic rigor for which he was known, along with his innovation and foresight, really characterize our understanding of Dr. Bigelow now. And I'm pleased that Dr. Bigelow's daughter, Pixie Bigelow Curry, and some members of her family are here with us online today as well. So thank you again for your support. So we are going to break with tradition a little bit, and Bo Wang is our 2024 Bigelow lecturer. Bo is the inaugural Temerty professor in AI research and education in medicine. He's a principal at the Vector Institute, where he holds a CFAR chair in AI, and he's also the chief AI scientist at the University Health Network. He holds a Canada Research Chair for AI in medicine. Again, originally obtained his PhD at Stanford in the Department of Computer Science, and Stanford along with the U of T, where, as everybody knows, Jeff Hinton just got the Nobel Prize for his pioneering work from decades ago. were two of the sort of hotbeds of AI research. He's also won the Gardner Early Career Research Award, and his own research is focused on machine learning, computational biology, and computer vision. And you're going to see some examples of that in the talk that he's going to give today. And I just cut it and pasted a little sort of snapshot of both citations from Google Scholar, and you can see this meteoric rise really sort of parallels the overall societal and academic understanding of the importance of AI as it develops here. So I've asked Bo to give a talk about generative AI in healthcare, and particularly really to sort of outline some of the ways in which we as surgeons can get involved with this AI revolution literally today here on November 1st. Okay, so Bo, thank you for coming. We're very much looking forward to your 2024 Bigelow lecture.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, and it is a real privilege to be here today for the Bigelow lecture. Though I didn't have the chance to know Dr. Bigelow personally, thank you. I've been constantly inspired by his legacy and his lasting impact on both University of Toronto and the whole field of surgery. As a young researcher in AI for medicine, his pioneering work, particularly in hypothermia and cardiac surgery, really was inspired me to explore the whole frontier of medicine. And today, I hope to build on his spirit of innovation as we explore the transformative field in modern medicine. Particularly, I want to talk about how generative AI can be used for healthcare. And today, my talk is The Future is Here, Generative AI for Healthcare. And specifically, I will talk about the application of generative AI in three fields. One is EHR, the second one is medical imaging, the third one is genomic. And specifically, I will use three work from my lab to illustrate the power of generative AI in different fields in medicine. All right, let's get started. So what is generative AI? If you search this term in Google, the first page pop out is from Wikipedia. And the definition given by Wikipedia of generative AI is that generative AI is a type of AI that is capable of generating text, images, or other media using generative methods. So here the keywords is generating. So the difference of generative AI versus the traditional AI is its capacity to generate novel content. However, the concept of generative AI is nothing normal. We've been doing research for generative AI for more than decades. And before large language model, which everyone knows about, particularly because of the rise of language models such as ChatGPT, we already have lots of different branches of generative AI, such as generative adversarial network, which is GAN, which is some of the work I did during my PhD at Stanford, variation autoencoder, diffusion models, etc. But today, I will mostly focus on the new branch of generative AI, which is large language models. And the typical example of large language model is ChatGPT. All right, so what are large language models, or LLM for short? You probably heard this term through social media, through press reports, and it's all over the internet. And there's lots of big players such as Google, Microsoft, Meta, and they all invest billions of dollars into this battlefield. And the pinnacle of large language models, as I mentioned before, is GPT-4, which is a recent model from OpenAI. And what GPT-4 can do is almost everything. This chart shows ChatGPT can almost pass all the licensing exams from different fields, including the legal licensing, including medical licensing exams too. And you probably heard the news that GPT-4 can pass the USMLE, which is a US version of medical licensing exams, certainly including a Canadian version as well. And Throughout the past few years, the whole industry witnessed this huge revolution of large language models, particularly generative AI. And this figure shows different models popping out from different years. And through this chart on the left, we observe a very famous law. We call it scaling law. And what scaling law tells us is that as time goes on, as we put more data into the large language model, as we increase the number of parameters in large language models, we get more and more capacity out of these large language models. And this is why you probably heard different versions of GPTs, starting from GPT-2, GPT 3.5, GPT-4, and recently GPT-4o. And all these GPT models have exactly the same architecture, which I will briefly talk about later on. The difference of these different GPT models is that the amount of data used to train these models and also the amount of parameters are contained in these models. Take the recent GPT-4o models. Since it's a closed model, nobody knows exactly the technical details, but there's some rumors says OpenAI almost exhausted the whole internet data. And it contains as more than 1.4 trillion parameters. In contrast, our human brain has about 100 billion neurons. So you can see GPT-4 is a gigantic model that has trained on gigantic amount of internet data. Together with the rise of large language models, from academic side, there's also a new term popping out for the past few years. We call it foundation model. And the idea of foundation model is that we can train this foundation model using massive amount of internet data, such as text, images, speech. And once this foundation model is trained, we can take this foundation model and adapt it to many downstream tasks. And certainly GPT-4 is a typical example of foundation models. And this is why if you have a GPT-4 app on your phone, you can open the app and not only can type text, you can also talk to GPT-4. You can also even use GPT-4 to take a photo and then upload the photo to GPT-4. And then GPT-4 will look at the photo and interpret the photo. There's a very famous example that people can write some instructions, for example, create a website for me on a piece of napkins. And then we can use GPT-4, take the photo of the napkins, and then GPT-4 can look at the napkins and then create a personal website for you within seconds. So this is an example of how different large language or foundation models can look at different modalities of data and interpret, understand it, and even sometimes perform reasoning based on the data they look at. Since this is an academic lecture, so I want to focus on the academic side of definition of different models. So particularly the term foundation model was first coined by this seminar paper titled On the Opportunities and Risks of Foundation Model, co-authored by almost hundreds of researchers from Stanford. And in this paper, they first coined the term foundation model. As I mentioned, really the idea of foundation model is its capacity to take a massive amount of data and perform many downstream tasks at the same time. However, that paper has 300 pages, so too long, don't read. I summarize some of the key features of foundation model as ABCD. Here, A, algorithms. Most of foundation model are based on a particular type of deep learning architect called transformers. And transformer was first invented by Google in 2018. And since then, it becomes the most dominant choice of deep learning architect, which I will briefly talk about later on. B, business. As a key idea of foundation model is that one foundation model can enable multiple tasks by transfer learning, and which I just briefly talk about how GPT-4 can take different modalities and perform multiple tasks at the same time. C, computing. Most of foundation model or large language model requires specialized hardware such as GPUs or TPUs if we are from Google. And this is exactly why NVIDIA becomes the most valuable companies in the world. That's due to the huge need of special hardwares such as GPUs. Last, D, data. Data is the new oil for AI, and this is particularly true for foundation model or large language models, that most of foundation model require massive amount of data for pre-training. And throughout this lecture, you will see how these ABCD components are reflected at different foundation models we developed at our lab. All right, the first large language model I want to talk about from our lab is large language model for EHR, electronic health records. Particularly, we call it Clinical Camel. We also use AI to generate a logo, which I show on the right. Hopefully, you like it. The idea behind Clinical Camel is that GPT-4 is great, but GPT-4 is designed for general languages. It is not tailored for healthcare. And we need a language model that is specifically tailored for healthcare so that it can understand different medical terms, such as all the surgery names, all the drug names, things like those. The second reason behind Clinical Camel is that while GPT-4 is great, but it is a model owned by a private company, and particularly doctors in Canada, are not supposed to directly ask questions or input patient information into GPT-4, because by using that, you automatically upload all the patient information or sensitive information to GPT-4 and then flow to OpenAI, which is a US company, which is outside of Canadian soil, which also violates the Canadian privacy regulations. So for these reasons, we want a Canadian-born open source large language model for healthcare. These are the reasons we develop our own large language model for healthcare. We call it Clinical Camel. The way we develop this model is that we curate a massive amount of medical data from public domains, such as Wikipedia, such as all the medical literatures from different journals, such as New England journals, Nature, Science, Cells, etc. And once we cured this massive amount of medical text cohort, we took the open source model from Meta and then continuously fine-tuned our large language model so that we specifically instruct the Clinical Camel to understand different terms of medicine. Once this model was trained, we tested this Clinical Camel, and not surprisingly, this large language model can pass all the medical exams you can find in the market, including USMLE from the US as well. This Clinical Camel was released right after ChatGPT was released, and was the first open sourced large language model that can pass USMLE, which is a US medical licensing exam. And certainly you can see it's not perfect yet. The score is ranging from 70 to 80. I don't know whether you're going to trust this doctor that can kind of pass all the exams with 70, 80. But the unique thing about this large language model is that it can consistently passing all different kinds of medical exams at different specialties. This is a very interesting Twitter encounter I had. So the doctor I shown here, whose name is Keith, he's a very famous doctor in US. And he's also a Twitter influencer in the sense that he often posts some medical quiz on Twitter. And then he asks his trainees to answer these quiz through Twitter. One day he posted, patient presents with abdominal pain and vomiting. What's the diagnosis with this picture? And since I'm not a doctor, so I know nothing about this diagnosis. So what I did is basically ask the questions into Clinical Camel. And I basically said, patient presents a lot of discrete black dots or moles on the lips, not tongue, with abdominal pains and vomiting. What is the diagnosis? And within seconds, Clinical Camel outputs the diagnosis, which is PJ syndrome, which again, I know nothing about. So I posted, and to my surprise, this is actually the right answer to this quiz. And also none of his trainees online on that day can get this correct answer. So this was a huge surprise to me, but certainly a testament about how powerful this large language model can be used to help with decision making, help with diagnosis. Since we published clinical chemo, we start to participate in different international challenges. This is a particular challenge we won the first place at. And this challenge basically asks all the participants from different countries to generate clinical notes from doctor-patient conversations using large language model. And this challenge is particularly useful and timely, is that particularly in Canada, we face a crisis in healthcare, particularly is medical professional burnouts. And one of the driving factors of doctor burnout is charting. And the doctors spend significant time just into clinical notes, writing, charting, things like those. And the hope from this challenge is that if can we design AI that can listen to doctor-patient conversations and directly generate notes so that doctor can spend more time with patients. And using clinical chemo, we actually won the first place globally in generating the most accurate and concise clinical notes from doctor-patient conversations. And we also performed some evaluation. We find that the notes generated from clinical chemo can have equal or even higher quality than the notes generated by doctors. So this is particularly useful to help reduce doctor burnout, to help improve the efficiency of doctors by streamlining their workflows. And since then, there's lots of big companies, particularly Microsoft, which partner with Epic, which is one of the major EHR providers, to provide similar functions through generative AIs. And now I know there's already lots of trialing sites in US. They start to talk to a hospital in Canada as well. So hopefully we'll see lots of applications of generative AI in hospital workflows. So this is the first large language model I want to talk about, which is focusing on EHR. The second large language model I want to talk about is for medical imaging. And particularly this model, we call it segment anything for medical image, or MedSam for short. And particularly we focus on developing these medical language models to help with medical segmentation, because medical segmentation is a core technology for precise medical image analysis. And medical segmentation is a half-century problem. Our lab has been focusing on medical segmentation for many years. And throughout the years, again, we see a clear trend, which is, again, scaling law, where we see more powerful computing, more data are being used to train these foundation models for medical imaging. And since 2023, which is the year ChatGPT was released, most of there's a huge trend that using foundation model to help with medical trainings. And particularly, Meta announced the first foundation model for natural image segmentation called segment anything. What segment anything can do, hopefully the video can play. Yes, awesome. What segment anything model can do is that it can segment almost really, as the name suggests, anything in any natural images. And Meta trains this model using 2.2 billion natural images. And you can imagine the cost they use to train these models. And then as an academic lab, we were thinking, can we use this segment anything model to help with medical segmentations? And we find that if we perform zero shot on these SAM models, it does not work on medical images. So it needs further fine tuning to tell the model what is medical images. So what we did is that we curated another 1 million medical image examples with segmentation masks. And from the chart, you can see that this 1 million image mostly contain MRI, CT scan, endoscope, ultrasound, X-ray, a bit of pathology as well. And once we took this 1 million images, we continuously fine-tune the image encoder from a SAM model published by Meta. And then we train the mask decoder from scratch. And the idea of this training scheme is that we want to tell the foundation model that what is medical image, what is X-ray, what is CT scan, what is endoscope images, things like those. And so that this model can recognize different organs, different objects, different even tumors, lesions in medical images. Since we developed this model, we perform extensive validations. For example, we took images from Canadian hospitals, such as MRI, CT scan, X-ray, and then we compare with many specialist approach, such as UNet, Deep Lab, V3, which is kind of the state-of-art segmentation models before our MedSam. And you will see that MedSam outperformed these specialist approach in different segmentations. And then we also took images from from hospitals outside Canada, such as US, Europe, Asia. And then again, we validated the accuracy of MedSam on different segmentations. You will find that MedSam outperform the previous state-of-art methods in different images. We also performed a human trial, a very simple human trial, where we invited two groups of radiologists, and one group that basically performs their original task, which is manual segmentation. The other group use the assistance from MedSam. What it does is that MedSam will look at the radiology images and then perform segmentation first. And then we will ask the radiologist, are you satisfied with segmentation results? If yes, just accept. If no, you do a little bit modification and then you accept. So this is one of the simplest human trials to evaluate how well MedSam can perform medical segmentations. And you will find that with the assistance of MedSam, the radiologists can reduce the amount of time they use to perform segmentations. Generally speaking, radiologists spend about half an hour to 1 hour to perform manual segmentations. And with MedSam, the time they use to do segmentation can be reduced to minutes. So this is a huge improvement for the radiologist workflow efficiencies. Certainly, we can use this model for other specialties such as pathologists as well. And next, I will show you a few demos, basically just to showcase how powerful this large language model in processing medical images. So the left is an example in pathology images for gland or cell segmentations. You will see that pathologists basically just need to draw a rough bounding box. And you will see that MedSam can segment the cells or glands in seconds. The right is example in liver and tumor segmentation in CT scan. And you will see that really radiologists just do a rough bounding box and the model can segment all the organs or tumors of interest. Again, the left is an example in MRI. The right is an example in X-ray. You will see that the model can actually segment the organ of interest within seconds very accurately. And I want to highlight two notes here for the 4 demos. First, all the 4 demos are performed using exactly the same model. So before MedSam, what happened in medical image segmentation is that for X-ray, people has to train a model for X-ray. For MRI, people train another model for MRI. With MedSam, we just need one model that can handle all the medical image modalities. The second highlight I want to note is that all the demos I shown here is through zero shot, meaning we can directly apply inference on these models without further training. So this is very preferable because hospitals from other institutions, such as in US, in Europe or Asia, they can directly download our model and just run the model on their data without further training. This is how powerful these large language model can be at different hospital, different image modalities. And because of these properties, this model has been widely used across the globe right now, including different hospitals in the US, such as MD Anderson Hospital in Europe. And our model being open source in GitHub and has been downloaded millions of times globally and being used at different hospitals for different medical applications. And since this is a Bigelow lecture for Department of Surgery, so I want to show some example in surgery as well. So the left is an example where doctors can use MedSam to run a segmentation endoscope images. And the right is how doctors can use MedSam, basically perform real-time segmentation in surgeries. You can see how accurate it is for this large language model in processing surgery videos. And because of this accuracy, we're actually working with different educational institutions such as TCAM in U of T to see how these models can be used to help with medical trainings. And the model is great, but there's one limitation is that you always require GPUs to run these models. However, GPU is costly. For example, to buy a Wang H100, which is most recent GPUs announced by NVIDIA, Wang H100 costs $50,000 USD. So it's not always every hospital, every clinical bedside have the budget to buy GPUs. So in order to make these models accessible to almost everyone, we perform a dilation that we train a much smaller weight of MedSam. We call it lightweight MedSam or tiny MedSam. So that it basically, what we did is basically teach this small MedSam to mimic every output of the large MedSam. And then with that, we can further train this tiny MedSam using the 1 million medical images we had before. And then we have actually a light version of MedSam, which are 10x faster and also does not require GPUs. So with this light MedSam, we actually integrate MedSam into many open source platforms, such as 3D slicer integration. Let's see whether this model can be played. Yes. Through this video, you can see that we integrate this light MedSam into 3D Slicer, which is open source medical image viewers, and then users or doctors from different countries can direct download this one and run it on their own data sets. This is an example how doctors can simply upload their images and choose a few hyperparameters, and then the model will run the inference on CPUs. Because the model is so lightweight now, any normal custom CPUs can be used to run these large language models. And because of this, this easy to use convenience to use property by our MedSam, this model being ranked by, by Nature the top 50 inventions of AI models in healthcare, being widely used by different hospitals in the globe. And our paper was published April this year, and for the within six months, our paper has been cited almost 1,000 times. So this is how fast AI being adopted in real world clinic settings, and how fast this the pace of AI iterations in healthcare. Yeah, this is what I said. MedSam being widely used in different open source models, and our GitHub repository is the most started repository for AI in medicine. All right, I will use the last 10 minutes to talk about the last model, which is another large language model for genomic. We call it SCGPT, which is a single cell, is a GPT model for processing single cell genomics. This is published in Nature Method this year again. And what we did for SCGPT is that we took almost 33 million human normal cells from Chan Zuckerberg Institute. Specifically, we work with cell by gene teams to cure this largest single cell data. And specifically, we focus on brain, blood, lung, heart, kidney, etc. We train this first large language model for single cell. We call it SCGPT. And what we found is that SCGPT also holds this scaling law, which we talked about previous, is that the more data we train this GPT model, the better capacity it has. And due to this breakthrough, our model, SCGPT, was ranked by NVIDIA the #1 breakthroughs in generative AI for drug discoveries. And you probably heard that this year's Nobel Prize was first awarded to Jeff Hinton, who is a pioneer in AI learning series. And another Nobel Prize was awarded to AlphaFold, or protein engineering using AI. And SCGPT kind of falls along this line of research where we use AI to understand biology. And SCGPT was the first large language model that capable of analyzing single cell genomics, and has been widely used in many pharma companies for drug discovery. And because of this, NVIDIA ranked SCGPT together with 2 other models, the top inventions of AI in genomics. And I particularly want to emphasize that because of the availability of large amount of genomic data, it made possible to create models such as SCGPT. And specifically for SCGPT, we collaborate with Human Cell Atlas, which is an international consortium funded by Chan Zuckerberg Institute. And specifically, we curated one of the largest single cell data, which consists of 33 million human cells, covering more than 800 different cell types, and specifically focusing on a few major tissues. And just briefly, a little bit technical details that SCGPT can be divided into 2 steps. First, the generative pre-training. The second is fine-tuning. For pre-training, because this is the first large language for genomics, we actually have no pre-trained model to start with. So we have to train this model from scratch. And what we did, as I mentioned, using the 33 million human cells to train this first transformer-based large language model to understand what is a single cell. A little bit technical stuff. The input to SCGPT is 3 sets of tokens. The first token is basically the gene names. And this is exactly how ChatGPT tokenizes the words. The second token is basically gene expression values, which basically tells what's the amount of abundance in gene expression transcripts. The third token is basically condition token, where we tell the model which sequencing technology or which genes we use to perturb for single cell analysis. And then once we have these 3 sets of tokens, we train a massive amount of bulky transformer models, which has 12 stacked transformer blocks. And then we have this transformer-based large language model for single cell. The innovation we made in single cell is called generative pre-training for SCGPT. Unlike languages where order of words matters, for example, I like coffee is very different from coffee like I. The order of words matters a lot. This is why ChatGPT using this next word token prediction to auto-regressively train large language models. The way ChatGPT trains on the sentence "I like coffee" is that they start from the word "I" and train to predict next word "like," and then it start from "I like" to train the next word "coffee." This is how these large language models are trained in an auto-regressive manner. And similarly, in SCGPT, the way we created the order of genes is based on how important this gene to this particular cell from the single cell expression data. And then we use the more important genes to predict the less important genes. So using this auto-regressive way, we can actually train the first foundation model for genomic. Once we have this foundation model, the way we perform downstream tasks is basically through fine-tuning. The first task we tested SGBT is called multi-batch integration, where we have multiple batch of single-cell RNA-seq data. And we compare SGBT with different state-of-art specialist approaches models such as SERRAT-V3, SCVI, Harmony. And we find that SGBT can do a better job in integrating different PBMC, which is blood data sets from 10x. And then we also find that SGBT similarly can outperform SERRAT-V4 SC glue on integrating multi-omic PBMC data, where you have not only single-cell RNA-seq, you can also analyze single-cell ATAC-seq. We also compare SGBT with other tasks such as cell type annotations that we can use SGBT to predict which cell type this particular cell belongs to, given a new data set. Another example which are very useful for drug discovery is perturbation analysis, where you perform certain interventions such as CRISPR or drug interventions to certain cell types. And then what you want is to predict the gene expression after perturbations. And this is particularly useful task in drug discovery. And you can see that SGBT with proper fine-tuning can outperform GEARS, which is a previous state-of-the-art model published by Stanford in Nature Biotech, and that SGBT can do much better job in predicting the expression after perturbations. Hopefully, through these examples, you can see the pattern that before SGBT, what happens in genomic analysis is that for one task, you have to choose specific state-of-the-art method for this particular task. And after SGBT, what we can do is that we can use just one single model that is capable of taking care of all the tasks in single-cell analysis. This is the power of foundation model, is that we really just need one model that can understand the basics of cells and perform different tasks for single-cell analysis. This is what I talked about before, but it's particularly interesting phenomena. This is called scaling law for foundation models. And since this is the first foundation model for genomics, we actually want to test whether this SGBT also fits scaling law. What we did is following. We randomly sampled 30,000, 300,000, 3 million, and 33 million cells. And then we train exactly the same SGBT model. And then we perform the task of cell type annotations. The results are shown in this pink curve. We have two observations here. One is that, unsurprisingly, the more cells you train this model, the better the model becomes. The second observation is that once the number of cells exceeds 3 million, the performance gain start to diminish. The performance still increase, but the delta start to diminish. So this is particularly interesting to us, is that because this is the first foundation model in genomics, we actually don't know anything about the properties of this foundation model. And we find that it's not always the more cells the better. It also matters about from the heterogeneity of cell types, about different sequence technologies these cells are generated. And what empirically we find that it really matters to include different cell types, different disease types, even different species to improve the quality of the models. So this is slightly different from the language models in general language understanding. All right, just to wrap up some of the third language model, SGBT. And SGBT is mostly limited in RNA-seq. And we don't think SGBT is a causal model yet. In other words, still go by associations. And pre-training of SGBT is quite compute intensive. We took almost 20 A100 GPUs for 2 weeks to train this model. But the good news is that the fine-tuning is quite lightweighted. And we talk about, through this lecture, we talk about 3 different language models, one for EHR, one for medical imaging. The third one is for genomics. What we are currently working on, or the future version of large language model for medicine, is multimodal large language models for biomedicine, in the sense that this language model can look at different modality of medical data, such as medical imaging, EHRs, physiology signals such as ECG, genomics, even different graphs. And then this multimodal large language model is capable of combining, integrating different modality and generate the most accurate diagnosis for doctors. Last slides really just give credits to all the students who did most of the work. I'm just the one who talk here. And if you are interested to know more about some of the models we talk about in this lecture, feel free to look at my website, and also certainly give thanks to all the funding agency. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Oh, thank you so much for a truly inspiring talk. As all of you know, this lecture is usually given by a cardiac surgeon, but I think, all of us who have, been awake for the last few years would recognize and likely argue that, the impact of what we've just heard and the overall revolution in AI is likely to shape not only the practice of surgery, but healthcare in general in ways that, may be still somewhat hard to understand. But the other thing that we've seen is that the pace of change in this field is, for those of us who are used to the traditional timelines of translational research, both breathtaking and a little bit scary. So the world is changing very quickly. So we're going to open up the session for questions, both from the live audience here, and anybody. I'll ask you to just put your hands up, and then Chriselle will bring a microphone up to you so that the online audience can also hear the questions. Thank you, Chriselle. Again, then we have some questions from the online audience as well, and we will try and get to those as well. Okay, so please, Stan.
Thanks, Dr. Yao. Thanks, Dr. Wang. That was fascinating. My name is Stan Hamster. I'm the Vice Chair for Clinical Teaching in the department. And I'm very interested in education, so it's a slightly different application perhaps. But I'm very interested in the development of surgical skills. So from the time a novice comes in the operating room through their residency training to the time they become an expert, and then even at the end of their career when their skills may start to diminish, I'm very interested in that arc. And so I know you showed a really nice image segmentation video of endoscopy. Could we put a camera in the light of an OR and analyze the open surgical field and do some image segmentation or process segmentation over time, which would allow us to discriminate or make judgments about where this learner is in terms of their training, what specific feedback they would need to improve in that. Would that be possible? Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. I think it is definitely possible from technical side. I shown how medicine can be used in accurately segment all the organs, all the instruments, and the scenario you described, I think it's still ongoing research. I've seen lots of research from Stanford, from Microsoft. They perform similar simulations. Also, there's a few technical challenges. One is you have to have really powerful computing to support real-time inference, particularly for open seam surgeries. The second one is how is this human or doctor in the loop play a role to interact with the AI models? So this is difficult in the sense that how these AI models receives the feedback from doctors so that they can modify their ways in real time to perform inference. So there's certainly some challenge, but there's lots of active research going on right now in this kind of open seam surgery education. And I'm very excited on keeping track of this research. I'm happy to discuss offline about where the opportunities are. Yeah, thank you.
So we've got a question live from George, and then we've got a comment online from Mike Jewett. So George.
One of the questions I had was you've shown some fantastic results of ChatGPT and AI. What you haven't shown is how does it do it? And the reason I'm asking is we have a project at Sunnybrook where they look at CTs of the abdomen and then can make a diagnosis of the chance this patient has osteoporosis. And we asked the researcher, how does it do it? What does it measure? Calcification? And they said, we don't know. So for all we know is they could have been looking at the age and gender of the patient and making a diagnosis on demographics. So I'm wondering, do we know how this works?
Yeah. So I think the question is about the interpretability of these AI models. The lack of interpretability, or oftentimes we call it black box nature of these AI models, certainly is a limitation. However, there's actually lots of research already shown different heuristic, different ways to interpret these models. For example, in all the AI models for medical imaging, we can perform a approach called saliency approach, where you can basically perturb each pixels and then see the amount of changes in the predictions. The higher the change is, the more salient or the more sensitive this pixel is. If you perform this pixel-wise analysis, you will find regions in the medical image where they are particularly important for this model to make these decisions. So this is only one approach. There's many other approaches, such as attention-based analysis to understand the models. But do we actually understand how these models make predictions? The answer is probably no, but there's quite a few ad hoc heuristics we can use to help researchers understand how this model, where this model is looked at, how this model arrives certain predictions.
Yeah. Great. And then we've got a question from Mike online. Let's see. Okay, so a couple of questions. So could Bo go back to the segmentation demo showing surgery and tell us more about what we saw in the spooled video? And he was just asking for a bit of clarification on what was being generated and what was the standard image capture.
Sure. I still need to go back quite far. Yeah. This video is basically in endoscopy video where we use MedSam to segment all the instruments, and this is a project in collaboration with Dr. In Yue Chen, where we're trying to segment different instruments and also provide this go no go instructions about where's the safety zone, where's the dangerous zone from surgeries. And what this shows is basically kind of how these language models can be used even to analyze the temporal relationships in videos. And this is almost real-time inference, where you basically just run MedSam in a normal custom CPUs. And certainly the speed will be faster if you have GPUs. But yeah, this is kind of an example where these MedSam models can be used to analyze surgery videos. So far, we still don't have the capacity to guide the surgeon where to go next. I still just perform segmentation now. Since I'm not a surgeon, so when I discussed with a collaborator, I was asking, how do we teach the model what to do next? Can we just design a model that basically instruct robots to perform surgeries? There's lots of difficulty associated with that. One is even just for robotic science, there's kind of, we call it spatial intelligence, where how do you teach the robotics to perform 3D because the space is 3D. If we consider time, it's probably 4D. But it's just you need a mass amount of real-time videos to teach the model where to go. And you can probably just mimic. That's probably the best you can get by far. So for new cases, I don't think the model can actually understand where to go next. Certainly, this is just the current limitation. We only, in this particular video, we only focus on the simplest task, which is just segmentation. But next step is basically decision making, more importantly, more reasoning about understand where to go next in surgery.
Okay, maybe last question. I'm kind of mindful of the time, please. Yeah.
In relation to the first part of your presentation, there's a paper from Alberto that brings the point that it makes easier to put information into the medical record. Therefore, you're going to clutter the medical record with a lot of information that might be not easy to extract as a summary for the practicing physician. And also because it feeds back on the same information and it's not going to be the same quality, will eventually decrease the quality of the information.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I understand correctly, the models can generate information from the training data, and then can we use the data generated by the model to feed back to the model and continuously train the model? This is an excellent question. This touched upon a very important concept in machine learning called mode collapsing. The idea is that if you keep using the data generated by the model to feed back to the model and retrain again, will the model learn anything new? The answer is that it improves the accuracy for the first few iterations, especially 3 iterations. And after 3 iterations, the model starts to collapse. So this is actually a paper published in Nature where lots of the researchers did, they take ChatGPT and ask any novel question to ChatGPT and take the answer by ChatGPT and feedback to train ChatGPT again. They do it 3 times, the model increase. More than 3 times, the model start to deteriorate. So this is a very interesting question, is that the model can only generate information from the training data. This is why data is particularly important. This is also shown in some of the genomic large language model where the diversity of data matters a lot to the performance. Certainly, this leads to the question now, where do we find new data to train the next generation of AI, right? Because ChatGPT-4 already use all the data from internet. So there's 2 solutions so far. One is we can ChatGPT use mostly data from English. So there's still data from other languages. So that's one direction. 2 is simulated data, but then we kind of run the risk of model collapsing, which we just talked about it. So this is kind of certainly the next, this is a big question for train next generation data. And we start to see deteriorating of AI models, particularly if you train data from online, such as Twitter, because there's actually a statistic, like a significant portion of data generated by Twitter now is generated by AI. So this is the issue. And even for articles, for academic papers, we start to see lots of papers written by or assisted with language models. This is why you see a huge prevalence of words such as, meticulous, such as, dive into. These are some of the keywords generated by ChatGPT. So this is why because I teach too, I grade all the answers by student. If I see dive into or meticulous, I always say, oh, this is probably generated by AI. And then if you keep training this data generated by AI, the model actually start to deteriorate. So certainly this is still a research problem, and it's definitely very interesting to see how we can start to use some synthetic data to further train the model.
That's fantastic. And obviously, tons of interest, which is why we've got, so many questions. Like, Bo has very kindly agreed to sort of hang out the rest of the morning with us so that, for anybody who wants to sort of come down after we close out the session, then you may be able to chat with Bo a little bit. All of you are invited to this symposium that are running afterwards. Like, you can either come in person just over to the boardroom across the street, or tune in because this will be a Zoomcast as well. But we're going to sort of talking about a bunch of different topics that obviously are very relevant to the practice of surgery. So I expect that this will be another fascinating session. Again, everybody's invited to this. We've talked about a lot of ways in which surgeons can get involved, and some of those links have been sprinkled throughout Bo's talk. We can try and collate those and circulate them to everybody afterwards. But there's a lot of stuff that you can go to from his website or some of the other links that you've seen in this video or in this lecture, which will be recorded, and really get involved with those things literally today or this evening when you get home from the OR. So I'm mindful of the time, and so before we thank Bo for what has been a fantastic lecture, I'm going to ask Hugh to sort of close out the session with the last minute. Hugh, you were trained by Bigelow, and you're no stranger to sort of having a vision and broad impact on healthcare. What do you make of all this? What seems to be the shining wave of the future?
Well, the first observation is this is brand new territory for most of us. I feel like I'm in the wilderness trying to understand this, coming from the background. It is the prototype, however, of the humility that characterized Bill Bigelow's approach to life and his approach to teaching, in terms of how much we don't know and how much there is to learn and how much better we will be altogether when we understand more. Wonderful model. Thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Bo, thank you for a absolutely wonderful 2024 Bigelow lecture. I'd like to present you with this certificate.
Thank you so much.
And then also with this traditional sort of Department of Surgery tie. So wear this in good health. And thank you for enlightening us and sort of inspiring us. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you, people online. December 6th is the next university round, so we'll look forward to seeing you then.